Wind, forest, fire, mountain. It's a phrase that just sounds epic, right? It makes you think of samurai, clashing swords, this ancient warrior code. But what if I told you that the version we all know is actually incomplete? That we're missing a huge part of the picture? Yeah, let's get into it. So when you hear that phrase, rinkazan, where does your mind go? I'm willing to bet it's straight to feudal Japan. You're probably picturing samurai, right? Legendary warlords on the battlefield. And hey, you're not wrong to think that. It's become a massive part of Japanese culture. I mean, it is everywhere over there. It's in best-selling novels, huge TV series, it's a core mechanic in strategy video games, it's on trading cards, you can even find it on restaurant menus and on t-shirts sold to tourists. It's so baked into the culture that it feels like it could only be Japanese. But that's where the story takes a turn. Because get this, the true origin, it isn't Japanese. Not even close. It comes straight out of one of the most famous books ever written on strategy, Sun Tzu's The Art of War. And we're talking about a text from China, written something like 2,500 years ago. Crazy, right? So how on earth did this Chinese military text become a Japanese samurai motto? Well, the story goes that way back in 735 AD, a Japanese student studying in China brought a copy back with him. For hundreds of years, it was basically a state secret, only read by the absolute top brass. Fast forward to the 16th century, Japan's in the middle of this crazy, chaotic civil war period, and this one brilliant warlord, Takeda Shingen, he gets his hands on it. He loved it so much that he took those 4 ideas and stitched them right onto his battle flag. That flag became the symbol of his unstoppable army. Okay, but here's the real twist in the story. Takeda Shingen, well, he shortened it. He basically just took the last word from 4 much longer sentences. The original quote from Sun Tzu isn't 4 principles, it's 6. It's a complete formula for how a general should command their forces. Which means for all this time, most of us have only been getting 2/3 of the actual strategy. So let's decode the whole thing. All right, the first principle is probably the one you'd guess first. It's all about speed. This, of course, is wind. The idea is simple. Your army needs to move like a hurricane. You show up so fast, so suddenly, that the enemy has 0 time to prepare. It's pure, shocking speed. But pure speed can just be chaos, right? A bunch of guys running around isn't a strategy, and Sun Tzu knew that, so his very next principle is the perfect antidote to that chaos. And this is forest. Think about it. When you're moving slowly or just holding a position, your army should be like a thick, silent forest. Dense, organized, and totally quiet. It's about hiding your true strength and intentions behind a wall of disciplined silence. It's power under absolute control. Okay, so you've moved your troops. You are either fast as the wind or quiet as the forest. You're in position. So now what? Well, when it's time to actually fight, Sun Tzu's instruction is intense. You attack like fire. This isn't a gentle push. This is a wildfire raging across a dry field. It's ferocious. It spreads everywhere at once, and it's unstoppable. The goal is to be a relentless, overwhelming force of destruction. So you've got the unstoppable force, right? But you know the old paradox? What happens when it meets an immovable object? Well, Sun Tzu says sometimes you need to be that immovable object. And that brings us to the 4th principle, the perfect opposite of fire. You become the mountain. When you're on defense, your lines have to be as solid and unshakable as a mountain. You just don't break. No matter what the enemy throws at you, you stand firm. Okay, so that's wind, forest, fire, and mountain, the famous 4. But what about the 2 principles that got cut from the flag? This is where Sun Tzu's genius really shines, because we move from just physical tactics to straight-up psychological warfare. The 5th principle is to be inscrutable as shadow. This means when you're hiding or just waiting for the right moment, the enemy should have no idea what you're planning. You become a total mystery. And that uncertainty, that's a weapon. It creates fear and doubt in your opponent's mind before you've even made a move. And at last, after all that movement and patience and deception, when you finally decide to act, what does that look like? What's the final move? It's not a subtle push. It's a strike like a thunderbolt. The idea is that your final move comes out of nowhere with shocking, overwhelming power. It's so sudden, so decisive, that the enemy is shattered before they even realize what hit them. Game over. So, there you have it, the complete 6 principles. It all sounds great in theory, but does it actually work in the absolute chaos of a real battle? Oh yeah. Let's look at a perfect example from a Han Dynasty general named Guang, a guy so good they called him the Flying General. So picture this. Guang is out with just 100 of his cavalrymen, and he rounds a corner and runs smack into an enemy army of several thousand warriors. His men, understandably, freak out. They are outnumbered dozens to 1. If they turn and run, they're dead. They'll just be picked off one by one.
But Guang, he does the craziest thing imaginable. Instead of running, he tells his men to advance towards the enemy army. They ride until they're just outside of bow range, and then he gives an order that must have sounded like pure insanity. Everyone off your horses, take off the saddles. His soldiers must have thought he'd lost his mind, but they did it. They just started acting like they were making camp for the night right in front of thousands of enemy soldiers.
And what he did next was a masterclass in Sun Tzu's entire philosophy. Remember that initial chase? That was swift as the wind. But the real genius move was getting off the horses. That made his plan completely inscrutable as shadow. The enemy had no idea what to think. They were baffled. By just sitting there, calm and disciplined, his 100 men became immovable as a mountain. They were holding their ground against thousands without panicking. Then, an enemy general rides out to see what's going on, and bam! Guang and a few men charge out, a sudden attack like fire, and take him down. That single, decisive action was a strike like a thunderbolt. The enemy was so confused and spooked, they were convinced it had to be a trap for a much larger army. And so, under the cover of darkness, they just left. Guang saved every single one of his men. Look, this is way more than just a cool story about ancient battles. These 6 ideas, speed, order, attack, defense, mystery, and the final blow, they apply to almost anything. Think about it in business. You launch a product swift as the wind to beat the competition. Your team works with the disciplined focus of a silent forest. Your marketing campaign hits like fire. And when problems pop up, you have to be immovable as a mountain. It's a timeless blueprint for getting things done effectively. But let's be real, getting a whole group of people, a company, a sports team, whatever, to move with that kind of perfect harmony is, well, it's insanely hard. To have everyone switch from wind to forest to fire as if they're all one single mind, that doesn't just happen. It takes one thing that matters more than anything else. Practice. Just relentless, hardcore practice. There's no secret, there's no shortcut. I mean, you've seen those military parades, right? Where thousands of soldiers move like a single machine. That's not magic. That's the result of months and months of grueling, focused training, doing nothing else but practicing those movements. That is the only way to get a group of people to embody these principles, to turn them into a force that can be both as still as a mountain and as fast as a thunderbolt. And really, that's the big question for all of us, isn't it? And whatever we're trying to achieve, what are we willing to practice that hard for?